Okay, good morning. Here's a quiz review and the solutions. So we want to draw the angle and evaluate. So 5 pi over 6 is in the second quadrant. It's 150 degrees. And notice it's in the second quadrant, sine is y, so it must be positive, and it is positive 1/2. The second one, negative 2 pi over 3. Well, this is about 1 pi over 3. Remember, that's a third of a pi. But since it's negative, it's going clockwise. So there is negative 1 pi over 3, negative 2 pi over 3. It's the same as negative 120 degrees. And you're down here where the x's and y's are both negative, which means my tangent is going to be positive, and it is positive rad 3. Remember, tangent is the slope function. And so it's the same thing as, it has the same tangent as positive pi over 3, which has a tangent of rad 3. 11 pi over 6, I need to go almost a full circle. 12 pi over 6 would be a full circle. And this ordered pair has a positive x value and a negative y value. So cosine is positive, sine is negative. Since this is a cosine, we need positive, and it's positive rad 3 over 2. Please do this. I think this is valuable. And then number 3, oh, these 4 are thinkers. So I think it's very wise to just sketch a graph of the angle and then try to analyze what's going on. So 7 pi over 8 is in the second quadrant. It's not a special angle, but it's an angle, of course, and it's in the second quadrant. Negative 2 pi is 1 full circle going backwards. Well, we know the exact cosine value of negative 2 pi. It's positive 1. For 7 pi over 8, I don't know what the cosine value is, but I do know it's negative, and it's close to negative 1. So it's like negative 0.9 or something. So positive 1 is much bigger than negative 0.9. So that's the relationship there. Moving to the right, 269 degrees is just 1 degree away from 270. So it's very, very close to 0. And notice it's on the negative side. So it's just very close to 0. I don't know what it is. I don't have a calculator, but it's darn close to 0. And it's just ever so slightly negative because you had to go to the left to get to that ordered pair. Cosine of 89 degrees is 1 degree away from 90 degrees. And that is also very, very close to 0. But notice, guys, it's on the positive side because you would have to go to the right to get that value. So any positive number is greater than any negative number. So that must be the relationship. On the bottom left, 5 pi over 3. Well, there's 3 pi over 3. I need to go 2 pi over 3 more. So that puts me into the fourth quadrant. And we know this value exactly. This is exactly negative rad 3 over 2. Negative 179 is 1 degree away from negative 180. So since this is cosine is the x value, and it's very, very close to 1, very close to 1, much closer to 1 than negative rad 3 over 2 was. So which side is bigger? Negative rad 3 over 2 is just greater than negative 0.99. It is, it's closer to 0. And when you're talking about negatives, the numbers that's closer to 0 is going to be the bigger number. And the fourth one, 7 pi over 8, we already thought through that one. We believe that that has a cosine value of about 0.9. Negative 2 pi, you rotate backwards a full circle. That has a tangent value of 0. And 0 is bigger than any negative number. 4 and 5, without a calculator. This is multiple choice. So how are you expected to find these values? The only way is to find it by process of elimination. I want you to think that sine of 34 degrees is got to be close to the sine of 30 degrees, which equals 1/2. So here's 30 degrees, and the sine value is 1/2. Well, that means that the sine of 34 degrees, which is just 4 degrees more, the sine value has to be a little bit bigger than a half. So I'm looking at my 4 options and I want to find an option that's a little bit bigger than 1/2. That's out, that's out. B is the best choice here. That option is a little bit bigger than a half, which is 0.5. The tangent of 134, again, think of a special angle, and the special angle that's best is 135. So the tangent of 135 degrees is exactly -1. But you want one that is, you want the tangent of 134, so it's closer to -1. It's very, very close to -1. It's just 1 degree away. And you look at your 4 options and you pick the one that's closest to -1. That's the intention for 4 and 5. Convert from degrees to radians. Remember, pi equals 180 degrees. So that means 1 degree is equivalent to pi over 180 radians. So 45 degrees must be 45 pi over 180. And this is 45 is a special angle, so it already simplifies to pi over 4. 140 degrees, well, remember 1 degree is pi over 180 radians. So 140 degrees must be 140 pi over 180s. The 10s cancel out, the 2s cancel out, and 7 and 9 are relatively prime. They have nothing in common, so that's done. 1 degree is just pi over 180 radians. Number 7, going backwards. So again, pi radians is 180 degrees. So that means 1 radian is 180 over pi degrees. So 3 pi over 5 must be 3 pi over 5, 180 over pi's. The pi's cancel out. The 5 and the 180, this is 540 divided by 5. And that is 108. Hold on a second. Yeah, 108 degrees. 5 goes in the 500 100 times, and then 5 goes in the 48 times. 1.7, well, 1 radian is 180 over pi degrees. So if you got 1.7, you have 1.7, 180 over pi. I know you don't have a calculator, so this would be, you're not going to be expected to multiply 1.7 times 180. That would be a little time consuming, so this would be full credit. 11 pi over 9, pi's cancel out. 180 and 9 both have a 9 in common, so you're left with 20, and 11 times 20 is 220, so 220 degrees. Inverse functions. These next 6 are inverses. For sine, you are only going to accept angles in this range. So what angle has a sine of 1/2 in that range? Pi over 6. And here's another sine. Let's do this. This one over here. So what angle has a sine of -1/2 that's in the required range? And that is negative pi over 6. For cosine, the range is from 0 to pi. So in that range, what angle has a cosine of -√3/2? That is 5 pi over 6. And here's another cosine over here. Again, the range is from 0 to pi. And this is 3 pi over 4 is an angle that has a cosine of -√2/2. And finally, oh, there's another cosine here. This is pi. And finally, tangent has the same range that sine does. And this would be negative pi over 3. For number 9, it's a composition. You have to do kind of 2 things at once. You want to find the secant of an angle that has a cosine of 1/2. So arc cosine is cosine inverse. So pi over 3 has a cosine of 1/2. So I want to find the secant of that. So I first find the cosine of pi over 3 and flip it. The cosine of pi over 3 is 1/2. So that means the secant is 2. For this next one, the cosine inverse, I'm sorry, no. The cosine of pi is -1. And then now I have tangent inverse of -1. So what angle has a tangent of -1? That is negative pi over 4. Remember, it has to be in that range. And then finally, the sine inverse of the tangent of 3/4. Well, 3/4 is not a ratio that's on a special angle, but it is of course a ratio. You can imagine an angle that has a tangent of 3/4. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. And if you construct a right triangle, you have a 3, 4, 5. So I want to find the sine inverse of this. So this is hold on a second. This is a problem. I meant this to be tangent inverse and this to be just regular sine. So don't worry about that one. That's a mistake. The intention here was to have the sine of tangent inverse of 3/4. That was the intention. So the sine of theta would be 3/5. Hello. And a similar thing for number 10. Number 10, you've got a right triangle, and you know that the tangent is 1/3. And since you know tangent is negative, it's either in quadrant 2 or quadrant 4. Here, the cosecant is rad 10, so that means the sine is 1/rad 10, which is a positive sine value. So that means the angle in question is either in quadrant 1 or quadrant 2, because all the sine values are positive there. And if the sine is 1/rad 10, then I get to put a rad 10 right here. And to find the cosine, it's adjacent over hypotenuse, which is 3 rad 10 over 10. And going back to the clues that you had, the tangent is negative, so it's either quadrant 2 or 4. The sine is positive, so it's either in quadrant 1 or 2. That means it has to be in quadrant 2. The angle that we're talking about has to be in quadrant 2, which means the cosine is negative. So -3 rad 10 over 10. And then finally, find angles that are coterminal with these. To find an angle that's coterminal, you just add or subtract a full revolution. So in this case, I want to add a full revolution, which is 2 pi. So in this case, 20 pi over 10. So I get 17 pi over 10. Here I would subtract a full revolution, which is 10 pi over 5. And that's 7 pi over 5. And then lastly, I would add 6 pi over 3. That's a full circle. And that gives me 16 pi over 3. That's still -16 pi over 3. That's still too big, or too small, really. And then that's -10 pi over 3. That's still, it's not positive. Remember, I need something that's positive and less than 2 pi, so I'm still negative. So I add another full circle, and that's -4 pi over 3. Add another full circle, and finally it's 2 pi over